The examiner guide advised us to really put on more focus there because it's an area where learners really do well. In fact, part of his not commitment, but is on the submission was the year 2024. There's a student that made 78 out of 80 English paper 2. Which means it can be done. And they said that these are the areas where these learners really do well. Begin with the excerpt, and then now we advance to the second question, which is the question that is based on literary appreciation. Yes, literary appreciation. Literary appreciation last year, there was quite some shift because we've always been predicting these patterns. The other years would say, when it's an odd year, narrative. When it's an even year, poetry. Narrative, poetry, narrative, poetry. But last year, and coincidentally, in our school, the senior principal, when she had an opportunity to address the learners, she said, "You have always believed in this." I remember I even went to her office one time. She was doing a book in poetry. She was to go and give a talk elsewhere, and she was preparing poetry. And she said, "They have said it's not poetry, it's narrative, but this can be happening." And truly, to her word, to her conviction, that was what happened. The students were given an area where they did not expect. So we also advise, let us not just focus on a particular area. Neck is just neck. They are examiners and they choose what they choose. Yeah. As long as it is that which is to be captured in the syllabus, our assignment is to cover everything. So the second area, the narrative section. Similarly, just like the previous question, which majors so much on the elements of teaching literature, the text, there are also elements here that are measured on. So the test here shall I begin with, first of all, the narrative, which we anticipated last year. We anticipated, but it was never tested because they went to an oral poem. It had been long since an oral poem had been tested. I think the last they had tested it was in 2013, somewhere thereabouts. Yeah. So let's begin with the area on the narrative, and I'm beginning with this because that was what was in the heart of the examiner. He started with that also. The narrative, and he said the first question will always be, the learners will be asked to categorize the story. They'll be given the narrative, and the question will be classify the narrative. Classify the narrative. Now, emphasis for this section have always been centered on the learners giving illustration. So the learners will say, and there are 6. Unlike the CBE, what you're doing with the G10, we only are limited to 6 with the because that is what is captured in the syllabus. With the present Form 3s and the Form 4s, and the 6 are, we got the trickster narrative. Beginning from in Form 1. Form 1 we do Olga stories, and then we take on we begin with trickster narratives, and then we go to Olga stories. In Form 2, we start with myths, then we go to the legend. Then in Form 3, we finish with a dilemma and wrap it up with an etiological narrative. Those are the 6 that are likely to be tested. So we were challenged to get to the level where we have equipped our learners and let them interface with quite as many of these so that they can easily categorize them. But the emphasis in this section has always been, let the learners get to a place where they are able to illustrate. Because it is the illustration that qualifies their identification. Sometimes a learner may have the right, but possibly because they know it, they just say it, they actually do not know what an etiological story is. So they have to give proof of that. And it is the illustration that will do. By way of example, a learner cannot just say, this is a trickster story because there is a character that is tricking another. They must mention the character. We have give a name and what they do. If it is an ogre story, they'll not just say this is an ogre story because there is an ogre. They have to say what the ogre does. The ogre is killed, or they have to capture that. Okay, moving on now to the next end. So there is, after the first question on the type, which is usually a 2 or 3 mark question, Then we advance to the next question, which is on the features of oral narratives. Features of oral narratives. Features of oral narratives. We know the features. We know the features. So there is number one, classification. And we've said there are 6. We can mention the 6 there, beginning with the trickster. Oh yes, Ogre story. The myth and the legend. Oh, let me also appreciate them that have come. I know you are members of the department. You're welcome. I believe this is also something you're doing, so feel at ease. Feel welcome. Feel belonging. Wonderful. So the legend, then we have got
Ideological.
yes, dilemma, and finally etiological stories. Then we go to the second now, which is now about the oral features. Oral feature. This question is key and will always be there, but we were also advised to help the learners to get to know how to separate this question on the oral features from the one that is particularly focusing on an aspect of style, because they may start keeping different. These ones are features that make the story an oral one. And you can quickly quite mention a number here, Madam Inyanchi. Features that make a story an oral one. Once upon a time, opening formula, once upon a time, closing formula, there ends my story. From that day, okay, there is the use of repetition. The common story I use when I get to class to teach the elements is the story we would tell when you were younger, when you were in class 1. I think I was even in nursery then.